So today we're going to be taking a look at a scenario where China invades Taiwan. Now this doesn't really seem too out of the realm of possibility because, China being China has been threatening Taiwan, and they've been doing so pretty greatly recently. We also see a lot of countries getting involved with this now. We see like Lithuania having an export battle with China. We see Australia and Japan sending a new defensive pact. So let's go ahead and take a look at a scenario where China does decide to declare war on the island of Taiwan. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Merchandise was released for 25,000 subscribers. This right here is a limited time design, only being sold out through February. Also doing a giveaway, so if you buy a piece of merch and send a picture to it to one of my staff team members on Discord, I'll link for that in the description, you get entered into a competition where you might receive a shout out. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into this video. So starting off, we have the PRC declaring war on the ROC. Now this is seen as a pretty weird event because, China says that Taiwan isn't a country, yet here they are declaring war on themselves, so everyone's kind of confused on this. But right away, we have some protectorates of Taiwan. We have Japan joining in right away in order to defend Taiwan, and we also have Australia joining in. So yeah, this is a pretty interesting scenario here, but Australia joining in kind of leads the UK to joining in, which then activates the pact with America. And with that, we have Canada following suit because we all know Canada loves the USA, and it kind of looks like that China might have made a mistake here. Luckily for them though, they do have Pakistan on their side, and in turn Afghanistan. We also see North Korea join the war, which in turn makes South Korea join the war, and this is slowly evolving into a world war. New Zealand joins in because of some kind of Commonwealth thing with the UK, and we have the Philippines joining in. With this, we have China expanding their friendships, so now we have Laos and Cambodia joining in on their side, as well as Kyrgyzstan. So yeah, we have the blue team that's going to need to invade all of the red team. Now, China's pretty tough, and they might not be able to do that. But moving down over back to Taiwan, we have China landing in southern Taiwan. From here, they move up the island in a pretty brutal battle with the military, but eventually they do reach the north, and Taiwan capitulates, but does not surrender. Over in Korea, we see North Korea making a push down into southern Korea, and we see Vietnam join the war on the side of the blue team. This doesn't necessarily go well for Vietnam, though, as we have Chinese troops who were ready for this invasion pushing down into northern Vietnam. In turn, we also have Laos cutting Vietnam off into two, and Cambodia taking over southern Vietnam. Now, we really see that the red team was ready for this scenario, but yeah, we have Vietnam being taken out and our first blue team country falling. Now you might be asking yourself about Russia in this scenario, and honestly, I think Russia would just ignore this and take this time to invade Ukraine and Georgia. Now let's think about this here. Does Russia really want to help out China in invading a tiny little island? Probably not. And since the US and UK are distracted, they'd probably have time to take over Ukraine. And honestly, they probably wouldn't even join the war. So yeah, China doesn't have Russia as a friend in this war, and the US and co don't have Russia as an enemy in this war. Back over in Korea, we have Chinese and North Korean forces taking over Seoul and eventually pushing Korea out of Korea. From here, we see the Middle East make a pretty weird decision as we have Iran join the war, which makes Saudi Arabia join the war on the side of the blue team, and which in turn brings Iraq and Syria into the war. From here, we have Turkey join the war because, Syria and Iraq. And at this point, everyone is confused as to why the Middle East made this decision. Last up, we have Azerbaijan joining the war, and then now we finally have some movement. We see Turkey and co pushing into northern Syria, as well as Saudi Arabia pushing into southern Iraq. From here, we have Turkey taking over the Syrian coast and pushing towards the capital. After taking over the capital city, they meet up with Saudi Arabia and Iraq, and the country capitulates. From here, we see the invasion of Iraq go pretty swiftly. Over in the east, we see Iran pushing into Azerbaijan, as well as parts of eastern Turkey. Now, the reason that this war started up is because this front over here really isn't going to be changing that much. China has just taken out South Korea and Vietnam, as well as Taiwan. And, landing on Japan isn't really the easiest thing to do. And the same could also probably be said for the Philippines. We have a lot of US bases over here. So I don't know, China's kind of in a stalemate here. So let's go ahead and go back to the Middle East. We have the blue team capturing Baghdad. From here, Iraq falls back as Iranian troops push into Iraq and establish a front line. Up north, we see Iran capitulate all of Azerbaijan, and they also continue their push into eastern Turkey. Troops in northern Iraq start to be pushed back as Iran starts to head towards Baghdad. Eventually, they recapture the city, and Iraq is reset up as a government. Down south, though, we do see Saudi Arabian troops cross over into southern Iran and establish a defensive line. Kuwait then joins the war, and we see that defensive line being expanded upon. Now, Pakistan and Afghanistan really haven't been doing much, because China has been able to take care of all of these, so they start to take their troops over to the west in order to help out Iran. But now we have the big, plot twist of this video, even though it's not really a plot twist, but we have India joining the war on the side of the blue team. We all know that India and China hate each other, and we all know that Pakistan and India hate each other even more. So yeah, it's kind of given that India would join in on this fun. Indian troops now push into a slightly undefended Pakistan as they close in towards Islamabad. The south of Pakistan is swooped upon, and Pakistani troops that were now in Iran are now being sent back to Pakistan in order to defend their border. Back over in Iraq, we see Iranian troops pushing down towards Saudi Arabia and starting to cut off this defensive line over here in southern Iran. They get very close to doing so, but eventually they are starting to be pushed back by Saudi Arabia. In exchange for that, though, we do have Iran pushing back this defensive front in Iran. Up north, we see Turkey take back all of their claims and start to push into northern Iran. From here, they take the exclave of Azerbaijan and start to move towards the Caspian Sea. Back in India, we have the capturing of Islamabad and the, annexation of this certain region. Back in Iraq, we see Iranian forces falling back to their border as all of Iraq is retaken by the blue team. And from here, we see Iran to set up a defensive in their mountains. Turkish troops then enter into Azerbaijan and reset up the government and set up another front line. And from here, we have the Middle East being locked in a stalemate. Alright, so heading back over down to Southeast Asia, we have the blue team making a landing in southern Vietnam. Now, this is mainly the US and UK Navy pushing back the Chinese Navy in this area, which allows them to make a landing down here. From here, they push up into Vietnam and meet the border of Cambodia. They then take more of the Vietnamese coast and start to push into Cambodia. From here, they capitulate the rather undefended country and continue to push up the Vietnamese coast. Eventually, the two sides are locked in a stalemate as the two sides are locked in a stalemate. Back over in Pakistan, we have Indian forces being pushed back, and in Iran, we have the stalemate in the north being broken. This leads to a pretty tough push through the Iranian mountains, but eventually the blue team captures the Iranian capital. From here, Iran falls back, and the country eventually falls. So now Pakistan is in a dilemma. We have the blue team starting to crush down into the west, while we have India pushing into the east. India starts to push back Pakistan, and eventually the country capitulates. Shortly after, we have the capital of Afghanistan being captured, which leads to the country to fall. Kyrgyzstan is then captured, and a front line in China is set up. So now we see all of China's allies kind of failing them a little bit. They do still have North Korea and Laos, but other than that, they're off on their own. Down in the south, we see the stalemate being broken as troops break into Laos. Eventually, that country capitulates, and Vietnam is retaken. So now China really is in trouble here. So taking a look at naval power here, which is something we really don't look at often, but we do look at it sometimes, we can see that the Chinese Navy is really playing a defensive here. Now they're holding on to their southern island over here, they're holding on to Taiwan, and they're holding on to Korea, although we do see blue team forces starting to gain the sea in this area. So yeah, other than that, the blue team has the ocean locked down. Back over in Korea, we have our second naval landing being made, and this time it's by mainly Japanese and American forces. They make a landing in southern Korea and start to push up this Korean peninsula. Now the North Korean army here is really being pushed back as we have China reorganizing their troops, some of them left Korea. Eventually, after South Korea is retaken, we have troops crossing over into the north. Pyongyang is taken, and North Korea starts to fall. We then see Chinese troops re-enter into Korea and set up a front line up north. So yeah, China really is fighting a pretty broad front here, and honestly, it isn't looking too good for them. Over in the west, we have a lot of their northeastern province over here being just taken over. Now, I forgot what it's called, but I know there's some not so good stuff happening over here. Down in the southeast, we see blue team forces crossing over into southern China and even taking this island down here. The Chinese Navy is then being overwhelmed in this area, and then we have a landing in Taiwan made, which kind of reestablishes the country. From here, we see the government of China start to go insane. And for the first time ever in an AdizzPro video, we have nukes being launched. Now, China has around 350 nuclear weapons. They're not necessarily going to be using all of them, and some of them are going to be shot down by defenses. But China drops a nuke on Seoul. They drop a nuke near Tokyo, although it does miss. We have major Japanese cities being hit by nuclear bombs, as well as some more South Korean cities. We see New Delhi get hit, as well as other populated areas in India. The Philippines are hit, as well as Vietnam. So yeah, this is what happens when I use nukes in my videos. They kind of just go all over the place. Now, these nukes weren't necessarily like the best ever. You know, Russia and the USA probably had the best designed nukes. But let's not forget about the nukes that were shot down. We have a total of 10 nukes being shot down over here in Korea and Japan. 5 nukes are shot down near Taiwan and the Philippines. 7 nukes are shot down in India. And all 3 nukes heading towards Australia were shot down. So yeah, like I said, the blue team does have good nuclear defense. All these were shot down. Maybe they got some technology over here from Israel. And yeah, they're pretty successful in shooting down these nukes. Now, these aren't necessarily like full-scale wipe out the entire city nukes. They might be like tactical nukes, but either way, they're devastating and honestly kind of overpowered. So how does the blue team respond? We have a nuke going there and nukes going all the way down the coast. So a total of 5 nukes are deployed in China, and that kind of cripples the country. Now, that's not to say that these other countries aren't crippled, but China's population is already down this coast, and that's where a lot of their economy comes from, and without that, they're pretty screwed. So this stalemate in Korea is broken as blue team forces move up, with a sweep in from Vietnam as they take over one of the radiated cities. From here, Tibet is encircled, which then kind of makes it captured. And finally, we see a front line established between the entire thing, which gives China an entire front line to worry about. After pushing up the Chinese coast and eventually getting near Beijing, we have the surrender of China. Now that was a very interesting scenario, and it was very different from my normal scenarios because nuclear bombs, you know? I really don't want to include nuclear bombs in any of my other videos just because they kind of throw statistics out the window and it's kind of hard to kind of predict what would happen. Anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at a peace treaty. So taking a look at this peace treaty here, let's go ahead and start off in the Middle East. First off, we have Turkey taking over all of Syria and northern Iraq, as well as some land in Iran. Azerbaijan gets some land out of Iran and also connects their exclave to the rest of the country. We have Saudi Arabia getting land in southern Iraq and a little bit of Iran, as well as Kuwait getting land in both Iraq and Iran. Over in India, we have them getting land off of Pakistan, and as well as getting some of their claims and a little bit more in Kashmir. Tibet is now a controlled zone of India, so it's kind of like in World War II, where the Allies divided up Germany and had their own occupied zones. This is an Indian occupied zone. Down in the southeast, we have Vietnam taking over Cambodia and Laos, as well as pushing up in the Chinese territory. We have Taiwan getting an occupied zone in which they just annex. We have the British occupied territory, the Australian occupied territory, the American occupied territory, and then the Japanese/Korean occupied territory. And then we are left with this pretty weak central Chinese country here. This is just like a puppet government for now until they kind of decide what to do with the rest. But overall, the blue team has won this war, and China really didn't have as much allies as they might have in real life. Like I said, Russia didn't join this war, probably because they were off invading Ukraine. And yeah, this was definitely an interesting scenario to look at. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Also, tell me what you guys think would happen in the comments. Like I said, I released merchandise for 25k. This right here is the limited design, so if you want to pick up a design, I would recommend this one. Thank you guys for 25k once again. I know we hit that back on Saturday, but still, just thank you guys. And I will see you guys in the next video.